Hi everyone! So in our October box we are featuring a book that is magical realism, so we thought it would be a lot of fun to do a video recommending to you some of our favorite magical realism stories.
So magical realism is definitely a hard genre to define. There's so many little elements to it. Its origins are based in Latin America, but has since grown to be a much broader genre than that. We've read quite a few magical realism stories and really loved them, so we're excited to recommend them to you.
So first up is a book that I've talked about quite a bit on this channel, and that is because it is amazing, and it is The Weight of Feathers by Anna-Marie McLemore. So this is a story about two rival families, the Palomas and the Corbeaus, and they are both competing circus acts in a small town. The Palomas dress up as mermaids and they kind of do like acrobatic shows in the river, while the Corbeaus wear wings and they do tightrope walking in the treetops. So both families have been fighting for many generations, and this is the story of what happens when a member from each family fall in love. The writing was absolutely beautiful, the tension between the two families was heartbreaking, and this is a romance that you're definitely going to want to root for. After reading this, I will pick up any book that Anna-Marie McLemore releases, and I just can't wait to read more from her.
So the first book I'm going to talk about is 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. Now this is definitely a classic in the magical realism genre. It's been out for a really long time and it is such an important story. The writing in this book is absolutely phenomenal. I read this as a teenager and completely fell in love. It has such a wide scope as a story. It's really hard to describe the plot because there's so much is happening in here. Like every sentence is very important and drives the plot forward. So this book is set in the fictional town of Maconda, and it explores generations of the Buendia family. Maconda is very isolated, does not have very much connection with the outside world at all in the beginning of the book, but throughout you kind of explore through several generations of this family. It slowly gets connected to the outside world and the corruption that that brings. It is truly a phenomenal story, and if you want to get into magical realism, this is a great place to start.
So the next book that I wanted to talk about is The Strange and Beautiful Sorrows of Ava Lavender by Leslye Walton. This is the story of a girl named Ava who in every way is a normal girl except for the fact that she was born with wings. So this book follows Ava coming of age, but it also delves into the stories of past generations of the women in her family. It's a story about humanity, love, and heartbreak. And it's been a few years since I read it, and I definitely want to do a reread soon because the details are a bit foggy to me, except for one, and that is how I felt when I read it. It'll make you feel both hopeful and sad at the same time, and I was just in awe of its whimsy and magic. It'll definitely tear at your heartstrings, but I highly recommend it.
Next, I have another magical realism classic, and that is Like Water for Chocolate by Laura Esquivel. This, again, is another family saga novel, and it follows the all-female De la Garza family and their like tribulations throughout the generations. So our main character in this book is named Tita, and as the youngest daughter of a Mexican family, tradition dictates that she is not allowed to marry until her mother dies. Unfortunately for Tita, she falls in love with a boy named Pedro, and he in turn falls back in love with her by eating her magical food. In a slightly strange move, Pedro actually marries Tita's sister in order to stay close to the family. This book is actually told in a really interesting way as well. Each chapter is actually a month of the year, and after each month there's actually a real Mexican food recipe that can be made. Now they're quite strange, and I would definitely never make any of the recipes in here, but you can definitely sense the magic in the food in this novel. I really enjoyed my time reading this book and definitely would recommend giving it a try.
So I'm sure none of you will be surprised that this is on my list, but I absolutely had to talk about The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. I'm not sure if this even counts as magical realism, but I can't think of a better genre to place it in. It's essentially a story about a psychic's daughter named Blue and what happens when she befriends 4 schoolboys as they go on a quest to find a dead Welsh king, which may be buried in their small town. This series means so much to me that I actually find it quite difficult to describe why it's so special. It's haunting without being scary, and it's sad while still being beautiful, and every time I read it, I uncover new things. The bond between these characters is one of the strongest I've ever come across in books, and I just constantly wish I could be part of their gang. If you haven't picked up The Raven Boys yet, I highly, highly recommend it.
Next, I actually have a Pulitzer Prize winning book, and that is The Brief Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde by Junot Diaz. Now I will start with, this is a very adult novel. I do not recommend this for the faint of heart. There is a lot of kind of disturbing imagery and things said in this book that you want to go in being aware of. Essentially, this book is about a teen named Oscar who is an overweight nerd who dreams of being the Dominican J.R.R. Tolkien. Each chapter follows a different member of his family, and it's just, they're all so quirky and strange, and they have so much oddness in their life, but that's what makes the magical realism in this book so interesting. In this book, his family believes that they have been cursed by the Fuku curse for generations, and it goes into how they believe it's affecting their lives. It is a really phenomenal novel, very well written, super deserving of the Pulitzer, that's for sure. I really enjoyed my time reading this. And also, if you like audiobooks, this one is actually narrated by Lin-Manuel Miranda, so I totally recommend checking that out as well.
So next up, I wanted to talk about Bone Gap by Laura Ruby. So this is a story about a town called Bone Gap, and a character named Rosa has just disappeared from there. The townspeople think that Rosa ran away, but our main character, Finn, knows differently. He's the only witness to Rosa's kidnapping, except for he cannot remember the kidnapper's face. Finn is desperate to save Rosa, but the town people don't really believe him and are no help to him in this quest. It's a super unique kind of mystery story that had me guessing all the way to the end, and I just absolutely love the depiction of small town life and all of the beauty and frustration you can experience if you grow up in one. It had an ending that I didn't see coming at all, and I just enjoyed reading this through and through, so if you haven't picked it up yet, give it a try.
The last book I'm going to talk about is Ask the Passengers by A.S. King. Ask the Passengers really reads like just a basic contemporary coming-of-age story, a very well-written one, mind you, with some LGBT aspects as well, which I thoroughly enjoyed. But Astrid, our main character, also likes to lie in her backyards when things aren't going the way that she would like, and she talks to the passengers in the planes that are flying overhead. I think the most interesting snippets of this book are you find out that the passengers in the planes are actually hearing her in a way, and you get to see snippets of chapters of these random characters' lives in the planes that are flying above this town. A.S. King is a phenomenal writer, and if you're looking to check out her books, I definitely recommend starting here. She has some other wonderful novels as well, but this one is my favorite.
And finally, I wanted to talk about The Memory Trees by Callie, Wallace. So this book is about a family who live way up in the mountains in a small village in Vermont, and they tend to an apple orchard which has been passed down from generation to generation for many, many years. The family has always been considered outsiders for their kind of unique way of life. When our main character, Sorrow, is 8 years old, her older sister tragically dies in an accident, and this causes Sorrow's mother to have a kind of mental breakdown, and she's forced to move with her dad to Florida. So after 8 years, when Sorrow turns 16, she decides she wants to go back to her childhood home and kind of figure out the secrets behind her sister's death. This book featured some of the most beautiful writing I've come across in a very long time, and it just wove this really intricate mystery all the way throughout it. It was incredibly heartbreaking and tragic at times, but also very, very beautiful. The land that they live on and the apple orchard were very magical in their own way, and it just felt like its own unique character, which I really appreciated. And it's just a book all about like the complicated layers that come with having a family. This book comes out on October 10th, so there's really not much time to wait before you can pick it up yourselves. So those are just a few of our favorite magical realism books. We would love to hear your recommendations. We're always on the hunt for new ones because it is kind of tricky to find.
As per usual, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more bookish videos, and happy reading, and thanks for being awesome. Bye!
Bye.